The restaurant was too quiet. Forks hovered mid-air. Glasses trembled in loose hands. And at the center table, where the floor-to-ceiling windows spilled light over white linen and untouched plates, a single sentence had snapped every head in the room toward them. "Can we have lunch with you?" one twin had asked, voice soft but unshaking. Then the other finished the question, eyes locked on the stunned man across the table. "You know, since you our father and all." Mark Halston didn't move. The CEO, the titan, the man who had built empires out of dust, just stared at the two 13-year-olds sitting across from him. Identical in the way only real twins could be. Same wide brown eyes. Same curls that wouldn't stay tucked behind their ears. Same faint scar on their right eyebrow from the time they... No, he didn't know that. He didn't know anything. All around them, silverware hit plates. A waiter fumbled a tray. Somewhere near the kitchen, someone whispered, "Is that Mark Halston?" But Mark didn't hear any of it. All he could see were the two faces he'd never meant to meet. And sitting beside them, a third chair sat empty. It was then that Avery leaned in, elbows on the table, and asked, "Do you even remember her name?" Silence held its breath. Mark's mouth parted, useless. Across the table, the twins waited. And behind their steady gaze was something deeper, something dangerous. Avery blinked. Lena smiled. And Mark finally asked the only question that mattered now. "How did you find me?" 6 years earlier, none of this existed. There was no three-star restaurant in Manhattan. No twins. No sharp questions thrown across white linen like knives. Just a tired woman standing on the edge of a hospital bed, holding one newborn in each arm and wondering how the hell she was going to do this alone. Her name was Rachel Green, 33, exhausted, and in the kind of pain no epidural could dull. She stared down at the babies and tried to feel something besides fear. Avery yawned first. Lena blinked second. Their bodies were impossibly small, wrapped in worn cotton blankets that smelled like bleach and old hope. Rachel hadn't told anyone they were born. She didn't even take the offered call to the father. What was there to say? "Hi, Mark. I know you're probably launching a hedge fund or flying to Singapore or whatever it is billionaires do at 10 in the morning, but I just thought you should know you have 2 daughters now." "Yep, 2. Surprise." No, that wasn't a message she wanted to leave on voicemail. They had met in a version of New York that Rachel rarely touched. A hotel bar, the kind where drinks were poured by men with accents and ice cubes looked like diamonds. She had been catering a private event upstairs. He was ducking out of a board meeting. Their conversation lasted maybe 20 minutes, long enough for her to make him laugh twice and for him to ask if she was free after her shift. She wasn't looking for anything. Not then. And he wasn't either. He made that clear. Still, there was something about him that made her say yes. Maybe it was the way he listened. Or the way he looked at her like he didn't already know everything. It wasn't love. It wasn't even a fling. It was one weekend. Then a promise to call that never came. Rachel figured she'd be naive. One more name on his call sheet. A dot on his calendar. Forgettable. Until the test turned positive 6 weeks later and suddenly, forgetting wasn't an option. He never returned her calls. His number changed. The company's front desk stopped forwarding her messages. At one point, she walked into the office pretending to deliver food just to catch a glimpse of him, but the security guard stopped her at the door. So she left, went home, had the babies, and didn't look back. Now, Rachel lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Yonkers, teaching art at the local middle school and working weekends at a framing shop. She painted at night when the girls were asleep. Sometimes landscapes, sometimes portraits, always in the dark, quiet hours when there was no one to remind her how hard things had become. The girls knew there was no father. At least, no one who mattered. When they were old enough to ask, Rachel told them the truth. Sort of. "He was someone I met once. He didn't want to stay. But I'm here, and I always will be." It worked for a while. But kids grow up. And kids get curious. Especially smart kids. Especially twins who finish each other's sentences and hide laptops under their beds and know how to make Google work better than most adults. It started with a last name, Halston. Then came a corporate bio, an interview on Bloomberg, a leaked wedding invite. He'd married a socialite 3 years after leaving Rachel. Then a photo. Then another. Until one afternoon, Lena held up the screen and said, "That's him." Avery stared. That's our dad. They didn't tell Rachel at first. Just watched from behind doorways. Read old emails. Found things she never meant for them to see. Like the photo strip taped to the inside of her old art portfolio, 4 blurry black and whites, one weekend of laughing and kissing and pretending time didn't exist. When the idea came, it didn't feel real. But Lena had said it so plainly, it didn't leave room for doubt. We should meet him. Avery hesitated. Why? Lena looked down at the photo strip, then back at her sister. Don't you want to know what kind of man walks away from people like us? Back in the restaurant, Mark still hadn't answered the question. How did you find me? Lena raised a brow. You're not exactly hiding. The waiter returned then, shuffling nervously toward the table. Mr. Halston, would you like me to? No, Mark cut in. It's fine. The waiter nodded and retreated. The girls didn't move. Mark finally reached for his water, then stopped. His hands were shaking. Does your mother know you're here? He asked. Avery smiled, a tight, bitter thing that didn't reach her eyes. She thinks we're at the museum with school. Mark ran a hand down his face once, then looked out the window. The street was bustling. Horns, voices, laughter. It felt like another planet. He turned back. Why now? He asked. Lena leaned back in her chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. We have a list of questions. We thought lunch was a good place to start. And what if I say no? Avery's voice turned colder. Then we'll find a bigger table, maybe with more people watching. The silence returned, heavier now. Mark studied them. They looked like her. All the parts he remembered and all the parts he'd never see again. He swallowed hard. Fine, let's have lunch. But inside, he knew nothing about this would be fine. And outside the restaurant, someone else was already watching through the glass. A woman with a camera. A flash of recognition in her eyes. The click of the shutter was almost silent. Almost. And the storm it would unleash had already begun. The moment Mark said yes, the girls opened their menus like it was any other lunch. Like they hadn't just detonated a decade of silence in the middle of Midtown. Mark sat stiff, watching them scan the list of entries. The restaurant's hum returned, muted conversations, dishes clinking, the occasional burst of laughter from nearby tables. But at this one, the air hadn't moved. He cleared his throat. Do you want to start with something to drink? Avery didn't look up. We're 13. Right. He knew that. He just forgot. He tried again. Water, then. Sure, Lena said, still reading. And fries, if they have them. Avery added, and steak, medium rare. The waiter came and went, somehow more awkward than before. Mark noticed 2 women at the table near the window whispering while glancing over. One of them pointed, phone halfway under the table. He reached for his phone, habit, defense, but stopped. The twins saw. Neither said a word. Then Lena spoke. Why'd you leave her? Just like that. Mark blinked. I didn't. You did, Avery said. There was no point lying. No way to dress it up. These girls had already skipped past the soft landings. He leaned forward, laced his fingers. I didn't know she was pregnant. She didn't tell me. Lena nodded slowly, like she was logging the answer, not accepting it. But you disappeared. You ghosted her before she could. That's not what happened. He sounded too defensive, even to his own ears. It wasn't like that. It was complicated. Did you love her? Avery asked. He froze. That was the worst question of all. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he did. He'd spent the last 6 years telling himself he didn't. That what happened with Rachel was just a mistake, a moment. But the memory of her never softened. It stayed sharp in his mind, her eyes, her laugh, the way she held her paintbrush like it was a weapon. She challenged him. No one ever did that. I don't know what I felt, he said quietly. It was fast. It was messy. I didn't handle it well. You ran, Lena said, not looking up. He didn't argue. The waiter returned with drinks and bread and nervous eyes. Once he left, Avery reached into her backpack and pulled out a black spiral notebook. She opened it to a dog-eared page and tapped it once. We made a list, she said. Things we want to know. You can answer or not. But either way, we're not leaving until we're done. Mark stared at the notebook like it was a bomb. That's a lot of pages. Lena grinned, just slightly. We're very organized. The first question wasn't a big one. What's your favorite color? He blinked. What? It's relevant, Avery said, flipping the page. We want to know what kind of person you are. Small things tell you that. He hesitated. Dark blue. She wrote it down. Then, what's your wife's name? Grace. Does she know about us? Mark looked at both girls. No. Are you going to tell her? He didn't answer. The next question was worse. Did you ever think about us? Even once. He had, in flashes. At night, in hotel rooms, when he couldn't sleep. In the rare quiet moments before meetings. Whenever he passed a kid on the street who looked vaguely familiar. But he always shoved the thoughts down. Guilt was a distraction. And he had work to do. So he lied. I didn't know you existed. Avery didn't believe him. Lena didn't blink. Then Avery said, Mom was alone. She gave up everything. Mark opened his mouth, but Avery kept going. She sold her car when we were 3. We lived above a hardware store for 2 years. She didn't sleep for most of our childhood. And even when she cried in the shower, she never said a bad word about you. That one knocked the breath out of him. Lena closed the notebook gently. We're not here because we need a dad. We came because we needed to look you in the face and see if it was worth knowing you. And is it? He asked, his voice low. Avery and Lena didn't answer. The silence stretched. And then, Rachel walked through the front door. Mark didn't see her at first. The girls did. Avery sat up straighter. Lena turned, just slightly. Rachel looked different. Not older, exactly. Just sharper. Her jaw set, shoulders square. She was still beautiful, but it wasn't the kind of beauty that asked for permission. It was built from survival. Her eyes swept the room, narrowed, and locked onto their table. She started walking. Mark turned and saw her just as she reached them. No one spoke. She looked at Avery, then Lena, then finally, at him. You took them. Her voice cracked, but it carried. We invited him, Lena said, softly. Mark stood, breath caught. Rachel, I didn't know. She didn't look at him. Avery, Lena, get your things. Neither girl moved. I said now. Mark stepped forward. Rachel, please. She turned to him, slow. Cold, you don't get to say my name. His throat tightened. She looked back at the girls. Let's go. Still, they didn't move. Then Avery said, we have more questions. Rachel stared at her. And Avery, this time, didn't flinch. I want to know what you're so afraid we'll find out, she said. Mark closed his eyes. And behind him, a woman near the kitchen clicked another photo. Later that night, it would go viral. But for now, all that mattered was this moment. This table. This war. And no one knew who would win. Rachel didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Just stared at her daughters like she was trying to pull them back with her eyes alone. The anger in her jaw was tight, but it was sitting on top of something else. Something older. Heavier. Fear. Avery's last question still hung in the air. What are you so afraid we'll find out? Rachel's gaze shifted to Mark. She didn't look angry anymore. Just tired. Like whatever fight had gotten her here had already drained her. And now she was standing on the last inch of ground she trusted. Mark stepped back slightly, hands open. Rachel, I swear, I didn't know they were coming. I know you didn't, she said. They're smart. Smarter than both of us. The girls said nothing. Lena watched Rachel closely. Avery stared straight ahead like she wasn't going anywhere. Rachel took a breath and spoke to them. We can talk about this at home. Avery didn't blink. Why not here? Because this isn't how families come back together. Lena's voice was quiet but clear. Maybe it's the only way ours can. Rachel's jaw twitched. She looked at the empty chair, the notebook on the table, the silverware untouched. This was never supposed to happen, she said. But it was mostly to herself. Mark finally stepped in. It is happening. So what now? Rachel looked at him with a fire that hadn't burned out in 6 years. You don't get to ask that. You don't get to act like you're part of this just because you sat down. Avery spoke again, her voice lower now. He's not part of it, but maybe he should hear some of it. Rachel shook her head. You think I haven't told him everything because I'm scared? You think I kept you from him out of spite? You didn't tell him anything, Lena said. That's the problem. Mark finally said, Rachel, you tried to reach me. I know that now. I should have answered. I should have. You shouldn't have disappeared, she snapped. Don't skip to the apology. The table went still again. Avery closed the notebook. Rachel exhaled, long and slow, then looked down at her daughters. Her voice cracked when she spoke. You want answers. I get it. But you don't know what it cost to raise you without him. You don't know what it cost me not to hate him. That landed hard. Lena sat back, folding her arms. Avery didn't look away. But something in both of them softened. Just a little. Rachel turned to Mark. You want to have lunch with them? Fine. But don't pretend it makes you a father. She turned to walk away. But Lena stood. Mum, wait. Rachel paused, back still to them. Lena walked around the table and held out a folded piece of paper. We weren't going to show you yet, but maybe you should see it. Rachel hesitated, then took it. She unfolded it slowly. Read the first few lines. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Mark watched her face change. Confusion, then recognition. Then something worse. Grief. She looked up. Where did you get this? Avery stood beside her sister. We found your letters. The ones you never sent. Rachel went pale. You weren't supposed to read those. Lena said, You wrote him 36 letters. Every year on our birthday. You kept them in that box under your bed. Rachel's hand trembled slightly as she folded the paper back up. She looked like she might fall. Mark finally asked, What letters? Rachel didn't answer, but Lena turned to him. They about you. About us. About how much she hated you, then missed you, then hated herself for missing you. Avery added, Some are angry, some are beautiful, but none of them was sent. Mark didn't move. Rachel whispered, Because he didn't deserve them. Lena said, We do. For the first time, Mark felt the room closing in on him. He wanted to reach out, to say he didn't know, that if he'd read even one of those letters, he would have come running, that he might have been someone else, someone better, but it was too late for promises. So instead, he said what he should have said a long time ago. I'm sorry. The words landed like stones. Rachel didn't look at him. The twins didn't move. Then, finally, Avery said, Then stay. Mark looked at her. Don't leave this time, she said. Lena's voice was quieter. Just finish the lunch. Rachel stayed at both girls, then at him, and for the first time in years, something broke in her. The part of her that had always stayed quiet just to survive. She pulled out the chair, sat down, and whispered, Fine, but I'm not hungry. The twins sat too. Mark exhaled, barely. Then Lena opened the notebook again. And the next question hit harder than all the rest. Did you ever think about telling your new wife about us? Mark didn't answer, because just outside the restaurant, someone else had already done it for him. His phone vibrated once, then again. He pulled it from his pocket. One message. From Grace. Who are these girls you're having lunch with? And why is the internet calling them your daughters? Mark stared at the message like it might vanish if he just didn't look away. It didn't. The screen glowed with Grace's words. Simple. Direct. A slow-burning fuse ready to hit the powder. Avery watched him carefully. Is that her? He didn't respond. Lena leaned in. You should probably answer. Rachel raised her eyebrows at him, but didn't say a word. Her face gave nothing away, but her arms were crossed so tight it looked like she was holding herself together by force. Mark's mind raced. He had no idea how that photo had already made it online. He barely remembered seeing the woman with the camera. Probably some blogger or paparazzi trying to score a clickbait headline about America's favorite CEO. And now he was here, sitting across from the twin daughters he'd never met, with his past unraveling in real time, in a restaurant where every stranger was one blink away from connecting the dots. He tapped the message. Then, slowly, typed back. We need to talk. I'll explain everything. Just give me a minute. Delivered. No reply. Rachel looked at him. How much damage did you just take? He shook his head. I don't know yet. Lena didn't look away. Is she going to leave you? Mark hesitated. I don't know. Avery said it quietly. That's what Mom thought you'd do to us. Rachel closed her eyes. Just for a second. Mark pushed his water aside and leaned in. I can't fix the past, and I won't make excuses. But I'm here. If this is really what you want, if you want me in your lives, then I'll stay. I won't run. Avery gave him a long, flat stare. You've been gone for 13 years. You're not going to fix that over a bowl of pasta. I know that. Lena said, then let's keep going. Rachel turned to her. You don't have to do this now. Lena turned to her mother, her voice soft. You raised us to ask questions, Mom. We're asking them. Rachel looked down at the table. Her fingers were trembling now. Lena flipped to the next page in the notebook. Were you scared? She asked. Mark frowned. Of what? When you found out you had kids. He didn't answer right away. Not because he didn't know, but because the truth felt like something he should have earned the right to say. Still, he answered. Yay. Terrified. Avery asked, of being a father, or of us finding you? He didn't try to dodge it. Both. Lena looked at Rachel. Did you ever want him to show up? Rachel's lips pressed together. She nodded. Once. Every time I got sick. Every time you needed school supplies I couldn't afford. Every time I couldn't sleep because I didn't know how to explain to two babies that the world doesn't owe them anything just because they were born. Then she looked at Mark. Her voice cracked. I didn't want money. I wanted help. I wanted someone else in the room when I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Mark said nothing. Rachel wiped her eyes. Fast. But you didn't come. So I figured it out without you. The table went silent again. Then Avery asked the question they'd been circling since the moment they arrived. Why didn't you want us? Mark's heart stopped. He opened his mouth. Closed it again. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost like it belonged to someone else. I didn't know how to want you, he said. Not because of you, but because of me. Rachel tilted her head. Try harder to make that make sense. He nodded. I've always been good at building things. Businesses, deals, schedules, but people. He gave a short laugh, joyless. People are messier. And you, he looked at the girls. You were real. I couldn't file that away. I couldn't know it. So I buried it instead. Lena asked, and now? Mark looked at her. Now I wish I hadn't. The waiter appeared again, like he'd drawn the short straw. Your food's ready if you're still. Rachel looked up at him. Can we get it to go? The girls looked at her, surprised. Mark didn't know if she meant we as in all of them or just the three who mattered. The waiter nodded and scurried off. Rachel stood. This was a mistake. Mark stood too. No, it wasn't. She looked at the girls. Are you ready? They hesitated. Avery finally said, Can we go with him? Rachel's face cracked. Just slightly. What? Not forever, Lena said. Just for the rest of the day. One day. Rachel stared at them like she didn't recognize the children she raised. No, Avery's voice hardened. You don't get to decide that. I do, Rachel said, not shouting, but close. Because I'm the one who's been here every day. I'm the one who knows what time you were born, who held you through night terrors, who scraped together rent while trying to figure out how to stop you from thinking a man you never met could still matter this much. Mark looked at her. Rachel. No, she turned to him. You don't get to play the good guy in their lives just because you finally showed up. You think answering a few questions earns you a family. Lena said softly, maybe it earns a second chance. Rachel looked like she might break. And then Mark's phone buzzed again. Another message from Grace. Call me now. The press is outside. His heart sank. He turned to the window. A small crowd had gathered across the street. A man with a telephoto lens. A woman holding a mic someone was filming on their phone. Flash. Rachel saw it too. So did the girls. And then all hell broke loose. The restaurant manager appeared. Mr. Halston, we need you to exit through the kitchen. The waiter returned with their to-go bags, eyes wide. The news is here. Like real news. Mark grabbed the bags. Rachel took the girl's hands, first instinct, automatic, and pulled them close. We need to go, she said. Lena looked at Mark. With you or without you? He looked at Rachel. Her face was ice. He looked at his daughters. The bags in his hand felt like nothing compared to the weight in his chest. I'll go with you, he said, if you'll let me. Rachel didn't answer, but she didn't say no. Outside, a reporter shouted, "Mark, are those your kids?" Another flash. Another question. And then Avery whispered, "This isn't the end, right?" Mark knelt beside her. "No," he said. "It's just the part where everything starts to matter." They slipped out the back door into an alley that smelled like old garlic and diesel. Rachel led the way. The girls followed her. Mark came last. Behind them, a photo was already going viral. Mark Halston, the family he never claimed. And somewhere, Grace was watching. The car ride back to Yonkers was dead quiet. Rachel drove, both hands gripping the wheel like the road might try to slip out from under her. Her jaw hadn't unclenched since they left the alley behind the restaurant. The twins sat in the back, huddled together with the to-go bags between them like peace offerings nobody wanted anymore. Mark sat in the front passenger seat, too tall for Rachel's decade-old Honda, knees pressed against the glove box. His phone kept buzzing in his coat pocket, but he didn't reach for it. He already knew what it was. The news. The photo. Grace, the woman he married, had sent one more message before they got in the car. "Don't come home yet." Not a request. A wall. He couldn't blame her. Rachel hadn't spoken a word since they buckled in. Her mouth was set in a straight line, her eyes hidden behind those big, scratched-up sunglasses she always kept in the glove compartment. She didn't look at him, not even when he gently asked, "Do you want me to call a car?" She said, "No," and that was it. Outside the car, the world looked ordinary. Kids eating ice cream on the corner. A woman dragging a stubborn dog across a crosswalk. A man arguing with a parking meter. Inside the car, everything had changed. Finally, Avery broke the silence. "Can we talk when we get home?" Rachel kept her eyes on the road. "We'll talk after dinner." "I don't want dinner," Lena said quietly. "You'll eat anyway." Mark turned around in his seat to look at them. "I'd like to stay, if you'll let me." Rachel's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "That's not your call." Avery spoke before he could. "Then whose is it?" Rachel didn't answer. When they pulled up to the building, a faded red brick walk-up with cracked concrete steps and one working buzzer, Rachel threw the car into park and shut off the engine without a word. The silence that followed was suffocating. The girls grabbed the food and climbed out first. Mark hesitated before getting out. Rachel stayed in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. He waited a beat, then leaned in. "If you want me to leave, just say it." Rachel didn't look at him. "They want answers. If you leave now, they'll think it's their fault." That landed like a punch. She turned her head, finally meeting his eyes. "Don't make me do this alone again." He nodded. Inside the apartment, it was dim and lived in. The kind of space where every inch meant something. Doodles taped to the fridge. A stack of library books on the floor. 2 backpacks on the hooks near the door. 1 pair of sneakers missing laces. The walls were painted the color of warm sand, but the corners were chipped. The couch sagged in the middle. Home. Mark stood awkwardly near the doorway as the girls dropped the food on the kitchen table and started pulling out boxes. Rachel set her keys on the counter and turned to him. "You can sit." He did. Dinner was mechanical. Quiet chewing. The occasional request for napkins or sauce. The twins barely touched their fries. Mark poked at his steak with a plastic fork like it might turn into a better idea if he waited long enough. Then Lena asked, "Are we going to your house next?" Rachel dropped her fork. Mark looked at her. "No, not today." Avery tilted her head. "Why not?" Mark hesitated. "Because your stepmother's upset. I haven't told her everything yet." Lena blinked. "You mean about us?" He nodded. Rachel stared at him. "You're going to tell her now, right?" "I already did. Sort of." He looked at the girls. "That photo changed everything." Avery's voice dropped. "Are you scared of what she'll do?" Mark didn't lie. "Yes." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Then you know exactly how I felt." Another silence. Not empty, heavy. Mark turned to her. "I should have found you. I should have tried harder. There's no excuse." Rachel crossed her arms. "You think that makes this better?" "No, but maybe it means it's not over." Rachel looked at the girls. They weren't watching her anymore. They were watching him. She sighed. "You really want to do this? This whole parent thing?" Mark nodded. "If you'll let me." Lena raised an eyebrow. You're saying that like it's a favor. Mark looked at her, startled. What do you mean? I mean, she said, we didn't come looking for Dad. We came looking for the man who walked away. Avery leaned forward. You don't get to be the good guy just because you showed up today. Mark exhaled. I know. I don't expect that. Rachel stood and started clearing the table. Good. Because if you want a second chance, you're not getting it from me. She looked at him. You're going to have to earn it from them. Lena stared at him. You think you can do that? Mark looked at his daughters. I think I have to try. Avery narrowed her eyes. Then prove it. He nodded. How? Lena stood, walked to her backpack, pulled something out. A small canvas, 8 by 10, an unfinished painting of him. Just his eyes and the top of his jaw, painted in bold strokes. The background was shadowed. Vague. It looked like someone had started to fill in the rest and then stopped. She handed it to him. Rachel froze when she saw it. Lena said, Avery painted that last year. She used one of your press photos as reference, but she left it unfinished. Avery crossed her arms. I didn't know what color your shirt was. The photo was cropped. I didn't want to make it up. Mark stared at the painting. It's beautiful, he said softly. Lena said, it's not finished. Avery added, we didn't know if it ever would be. Then Lena handed him a paintbrush. Mark took it. Avery nodded toward the corner. The paints are in the crate under the window. Rachel didn't say a word. Mark looked down at the canvas again. And then, slowly, carefully, he stood. He walked to the crate, found the paints, sat on the floor, cross-legged. The girls watched. Rachel turned her back, but didn't leave the room. Mark opened the first tube, squeezed just enough on the palette, and for the first time in his life, he tried to finish something that actually mattered. The brush hovered over the canvas, trembling slightly in Mark's hand. It had been years since he held a paintbrush. Decades, maybe. He'd studied business, built companies, lived in spreadsheets and flights and meetings. But this was different. This felt like walking into a room where everyone already knew you didn't belong. The twins sat cross-legged across from him, watching. Not judging. Just waiting. Rachel stood at the sink with her back turned, rinsing plates that didn't need washing. Mark looked down at the half-finished portrait again. Avery had painted it in bold, deliberate strokes, unafraid to leave shadows where they belonged. She'd captured his likeness without softening it, sharp cheekbones, tired eyes, a hint of something closed off in the set of his jaw. He dipped the brush in the paint. Midnight blue. I didn't know what you'd be wearing, Avery said. I don't remember either, Mark admitted, but blue feels right. He touched the canvas gently, the bristles barely whispering against the surface. The first stroke felt wrong. The second one better. By the third, his hand had stopped shaking. Lena leaned her chin on her knees. You know, she didn't let me see it until it was almost done. Avery muttered, because it wasn't done. No, because you weren't sure he deserved to be painted. Rachel's shoulders stiffened. Mark kept his focus on the canvas. Do I? Avery didn't answer. Lena said, ask us in a year. He finished the edge of the collar and set the brush down slowly, like he wasn't sure if it was okay to let go. I used to draw when I was a kid, he said, wiping his fingers on a towel. Sketchbooks, comic book stuff. My dad said it was a waste of time. So I stopped. Rachel turned off the faucet and started building hedge funds instead. Yeah, he said quietly. The room stayed quiet. Only the hum of the fridge filled the space between them. Then Rachel turned. You still paint? Mark shook his head. This is the first time since college. She nodded once. Her voice was flat. So we're a project now. He looked at her, startled. No, sure feels like it, she said, arms folded. Avery stood. Mom. No, Rachel said, sharper now. He walks in after 13 years, paints for 20 minutes, and suddenly what? His trying? We're proud of him. It's not about being proud, Lena said. It's about not pretending nothing happened. Rachel stepped forward. You think I've been pretending? No, Avery said. I think you've been surviving. And we love you for that. But we also want to know where we came from. Rachel's voice broke. You came from me. And from him too, Avery said, softer. Mark opened his mouth, but Lena cut in. Why did you keep the letters? Rachel looked at her daughters. She didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, she said, because I thought someday you'd need to know that I tried, even if I never sent them. Avery whispered, we did need to know. Mark's throat tightened. Can I read them? Rachel's eyes sharpened. Not yet. He nodded. Okay. Another pause. Then Rachel turned and disappeared into her bedroom. The door clicked shut behind her. The three of them stood in the living room, not sure what to do next. Mark gestured to the painting. You want me to hang it? Avery shrugged. We don't hang anything until it's finished. Mark nodded. Then I'll come back. Lena raised her eyes to him. You promise? This time, there was no hesitation. I promise. A knock came at the door. Everyone froze. Rachel's voice came through the wall. Don't answer that. Too late. Lena was already peeking through the curtain. Her face darkened. It's a reporter. Avery grabbed Mark's arm. How did they find us? He didn't know. Maybe someone followed the car. Maybe someone had his home address and just guessed. Maybe it didn't matter. The knock came again. Firmer this time. Mr. Halston? Mark? I'm with the Post. Just looking for a statement. Is it true these girls are your daughters? Rachel threw the door open before anyone could stop her. She didn't step outside, just stood in the frame like a wall with teeth. You come back here again, she said, voice low and cold, and I'll shove that microphone down your throat. The reporter took a slow step back. Ms. Green, we just want the truth. You don't want the truth. You want a quote you can twist into a headline. Now get the hell off my steps. He hesitated. Wrong move. Rachel reached for the door handle and slammed it shut in his face. Silence again. Then, from the bedroom, her muffled voice, everyone away from the windows. The twins moved. Mark didn't. Avery grabbed his hand. This is going to get bad, isn't it? He squeezed her hand gently. It's already bad, but it's not going to stay that way. Lena looked up at him. Promise. His voice was steady now. Yes. Another knock came. Not on the front door. This one came from Mark's phone. A call. He looked down. Grace. He stared at the screen. Avery whispered, answer it. He did. Grace. Her voice was tight. You need to come home. Now, before this gets worse. I can't leave right now. Yes, you can. Because everything is on fire, Mark. There are cameras outside. Your board is calling. Half the investors think you've been hiding some secret life, and the other half think you're about to tank the company. He rubbed his forehead. I didn't lie to anyone. No? Because I sure feel lied to. Do you have 2 daughters or not? The room went still. Yes, Mark said. She didn't speak. Yes, he said again. They are mine. Silence. Then, when you come home, bring a lawyer. The call ended. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Avery stared at him. Are you okay? Mark turned to her. I don't think that's the right question anymore. Lena frowned. Then what is? He looked at both of them, then down the hall where Rachel's door was still closed. The question is, what do I do now that the truth is out? The answer didn't come easy, but maybe, finally, it was time to stop running. Mark stayed the night on Rachel's old pull-out couch. It was lumpy and cold and barely long enough for his legs, but he didn't complain. He didn't even ask for a blanket. Avery had tossed him one without a word, and Lena had left a glass of water on the coffee table like it was routine. Like this was something that had happened before, though they all knew it hadn't. Rachel never came out of her room. At one point, just after midnight, he thought about knocking on her door, saying something, anything. But what do you say to the woman whose life you left behind when she's the only one still holding it together? So he didn't. He just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the apartment breathe. Pipes clanking, wind pressing through old windows. A car alarm down the street. The twins' soft voices murmuring from their bedroom across the hall. He didn't know what they were saying. He didn't try to. Let them have that. He'd already taken enough. In the morning, Rachel was in the kitchen. She hadn't touched her coffee. She wore a gray sweatshirt that looked older than the twins and had her hair tied back in a knot so tight it gave her face a harder edge. She didn't look at him when he walked in, just nodded at the counter. Toast, if you want it. Thanks, he said. He poured himself a cup of coffee. It tasted like battery acid, but he drank it anyway. He didn't say anything about the lawyer comment Grace had made the night before. He didn't talk about the board, or the reporters, or the million calls he hadn't returned. None of that mattered here. What time do the girls go to school? He asked. 8:10. Bus comes to the corner. I could take them. Rachel finally looked at him. Her eyes were clear, but not soft. You don't even know what street we're on. He nodded. Faye. They are not a PR problem you can fix by showing up and smiling, she said. They are real, messy, and they remember things. I'm not trying to fix anything, he said quietly. I just want to be around. Rachel stared at him a long time, then said, let them decide. So he waited. The girls came out at 7:42. Lena wore headphones around her neck and carried a beat-up denim backpack covered in Sharpie drawings. Avery had her hair in two tight braids and a folder under her arm that looked like it hadn't been closed all the way since third grade. They froze when they saw him. Avery was the first to speak. You're still here? Yeah, he said. I can leave if you want. Lena shrugged. You said you'd come back. I did. They stood in the doorway like guards waiting to be relieved. Avery looked at Rachel. Is he allowed to walk us to the bus stop? Rachel poured more coffee. It's your call. The twins looked at each other. Then Lena nodded once. Fine. They didn't wait for him to grab his coat. Just turned and walked out. He followed. The street was quiet. Pale morning light. A kid on a scooter zipped past with his dad chasing after him. The air smelled like car exhaust and sidewalk chalk and something faintly sweet, maybe someone's cinnamon toast drifting out an open window. The girls walked ahead of him, side by side, their steps in sync. Mark kept his distance. About halfway to the corner, Avery turned around. You nervous? He didn't pretend. A little. Why? He smiled faintly. Because you two are smarter than me, and I don't know what I'm doing. Lena said, neither do we. He nodded. Want to figure it out together. They didn't answer, but they didn't say no. The bus pulled up with a long, mechanical sigh. The driver gave them a once-over but didn't say anything. The girls climbed on. Just before the doors closed, Avery looked at him through the glass. Then she mouthed two words. Don't disappear. The doors hissed shut, and they were gone. Mark stood there for a long time. When he got back to the apartment, Rachel was waiting by the window, arms crossed. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, Grace called again. Twice. Mark ran a hand over his face. I should talk to her. Rachel didn't argue. You should. But I don't want this to be the end of whatever this is. It's not the end, she said. He looked up, hopeful. It's the beginning, she added, of a much harder chapter. The corner of his mouth tugged upward. Those are usually the best ones. Rachel tilted her head. You're not charming enough to joke your way through this. I know, he said. That's why I'm not going to. She paused. What are you going to do? I'm going to go home. Talk to my wife. Deal with the fallout. Face the board. Handle the press. And then? He met her eyes. Then I'm going to come back. She studied him for a long time, like she was trying to see through him. Not with gifts. Not with money. Not with promises. No, he said. With time. That stopped her. I can't undo what I missed, he continued. But I can show up for what's next. She didn't smile. But she didn't tell him to go to hell either. She just nodded once. Then handed him a slip of paper. A phone number. Text before you come next time, she said. I don't want the girls surprised. He took it carefully, like it might fall apart in his hand. Rachel turned to go back to the kitchen. But before she disappeared, she said over her shoulder, And Mark? He looked up. They are not looking for perfect. They are looking for real. He nodded. That he could do. Outside, his phone buzzed again. A text from Grace. You'd better come home. He pocketed the phone. Took one last look at the little apartment, the hooks by the door, the chipped walls, the place where his daughters had grown up without him. And then he stepped outside. Into a storm of flashing lights, microphones, headlines. Into the mess he made. But this time, he didn't run. The house in Westchester was too clean. Mark pulled into the driveway slowly, gravel crunching under the tires of his black SUV, the morning sun gleaming off windows that were a little too spotless, a little too perfect. The kind of house where bad news never arrived at the door. It just slipped quietly into the inbox and waited for you to deal with it over Chardonnay and silence. Grace was waiting inside. He could feel it, that humming stillness that meant something had been broken, but not yet picked up. She'd left the porch light on. Passive-aggressive, even in daylight. He stepped out of the car, brushed a speck of lint off his jacket, then stopped himself. No one gave a damn what he looked like right now. The front door was already unlocked. He stepped inside. The house smelled like lemons and a hint of whatever candles Grace always bought from that boutique in Hudson. Everything was still in its place. The gray sectional, the glass coffee table, the perfectly staged bookshelf with hardcovers no one ever opened. And there she was, Grace, at the kitchen island, arms folded, tablet on the marble counter next to a tall glass of water she hadn't touched. She didn't look up. Mark cleared his throat. "I came as soon as I could." "I know," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. A calm that meant you were standing on ice so thin it had already cracked. You just hadn't heard it yet. He stepped into the kitchen slowly. "I know you have questions," he said. "I'll answer all of them." Grace finally looked up. Her eyes were red. Not from crying. No, not Grace. From not crying. From holding it in so long it burned. "I don't have questions," she said. "I have facts." Mark's stomach sank. "Okay." She slid the tablet toward him. The headline glared back. "Lunch with Secrets, CEO Mark Halston spotted with alleged twin daughters. Sources say mother is former fling." Under it, the photo. Grainy, but unmistakable. Him at the restaurant. Lena. Avery. The empty chair between them. Mark closed his eyes. Grace spoke again. "You're not denying it, are you?" "No," he said. "They are mine." She nodded slowly, like each movement was measured in ounces of pain. "How long have you known?" "Since yesterday." Grace scoffed. "Really? That's the story." "It's the truth." She pushed away from the counter and stood. "Do you know what this means, Mark? Legally? Financially? Do you know what the lawyers are going to do with this?" "Yes." "No, you don't," she snapped. "Because if you did, you wouldn't have walked into that restaurant like you were auditioning for Father of the Year." He didn't answer. She stepped closer, her voice sharper now. "You humiliated me." "I didn't mean to." "But you did," she said. "And now we're a headline." "I didn't know they were coming. I didn't plan any of this. But I'm not going to pretend they don't exist." "Why not?" she asked. "You did before." That hit him harder than anything else she could have said. He didn't try to defend himself. There was no defense. Grace folded her arms again. "So what now?" "I'm going to be in their lives," he said, "if they'll have me." She tilted her head. "And what about this life? The one we built?" "I don't want to lose it." She stared at him. "Do you love them?" she asked. He blinked. "What?" "Don't play dumb. I've seen the look on your face. In the photos. You're not confused. You're not doing your duty. You're in it. Already." He didn't speak. Grace nodded. "That's what I thought." She turned and walked to the stairs, her voice trailing behind her like a thread fraying at the edges. "You can sleep in the guest room." He watched her go. Watched the stays creak beneath her bare feet. Watched the hallway light catch the shimmer in her hair before she disappeared around the corner. Then he sat at the island. Alone. The silence pressed in. He opened his phone and clicked on the photo again. Avery's face. Steady. Lena's smack, mid-thought. His own, caught between disbelief and something that looked too close to hope. A message came through. Unknown number. He opened it. "You said you'd come back. Just making sure that's still true." It was from Avery. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then typed, "I meant it." Another buzz. A second message. This time, "Lena. Also, you left your scarf. Avery says it's ugly. I kind of like it. Want us to keep it hostage until next time." He smiled, even though he wasn't supposed to. Type back, "Deal. But only if I get it back in person." Another reply, "We'll see how you do." He closed his eyes. And for the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel alone. The doorbell rang. He flinched, half expecting more reporters. But when he checked the front porch, there was only an envelope. No name, no note. Inside, a single photograph. Rachel, holding the twins as toddlers, one on each hip, paint smudged on her jeans, a small smile, tight with exhaustion, but radiant in the way only truth can be. On the back, in faded black ink. They were always going to find you. Question was, would you be worth it? He held the photo for a long time, and then, carefully, like it mattered more than anything else he owned, he placed it on the shelf beside the untouched hardcovers. He didn't know how the rest of this would go, but he knew where it had to start, with showing up. Again, and again, and again. Mark didn't sleep. He lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow, as if time had finally caught up to him and didn't want to move either. The silence in the house was surgical. Sterile. No late-night footsteps, no soft voices through the wall. No twins arguing over whose hoodie was whose. No Rachel humming while doing dishes she claimed she wasn't going to do. Just the whir of the fan and the sound of a life that had never made room for the truth. At 6:08 a.m., he sat up, dressed, and made coffee without waking Grace. He didn't leave a note. He didn't need to. She'd know exactly where he was going. Back in Yonkers, the morning was already louder. Trash trucks grunted down the street. Car alarms beeped. Someone was yelling at someone else in Spanish near the bodega. A little girl in a glittery jacket was dragging a backpack half her size down the stairs. Mark parked across the street from Rachel's building and just sat there, gripping the wheel. He hadn't texted ahead this time. He didn't want to ask for permission to come back. He wanted to earn it by coming back anyway. Just as he reached for the door handle, his phone buzzed. Avery, if you're in the car staring at the building like a stalker, we can totally see you. A pause. Lena, we have cereal. It's off-brand, but it slaps. He smiled, despite the nervous pulse in his chest. Type back. Hope it's not Raisin Bran. A second later. Avery, no, we're not 90. He crossed the street and knocked once. Rachel opened the door. Still in sweatpants. Still half asleep. Still beautiful in that way she didn't try to be. You're early, she said. I brought apology bagels, he offered, holding up the brown paper sack like a peace treaty. She looked at him, flat. Are they warm? Yes. Come in. He stepped inside. The girls were on the couch, knees pulled to their chests, watching something animated on a laptop that sounded suspiciously like a crime show disguised as a cartoon. They didn't get up, but they smiled. Slightly. He took it. Where's my scarf? He asked. Lena pointed at the coat hook. We hung it up. Still ugly. Rachel poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching him cautiously. He opened the bag and spread everything out on the table. Bagels, cream cheese, even one of those ridiculous rainbow ones Lena had mentioned liking the first day. She didn't say thank you, but she took it. Avery sat down with her folder and started working through math problems like this was just a regular Tuesday. Like their lives weren't on every gossip blog and finance site in America. Rachel finally spoke. You said you were going to deal with the fallout. I am. What's it look like? Messy. She raised an eyebrow. Grace? She's not talking to me much, he admitted. You didn't tell her about the girls. You let her find out with everyone else. I didn't know, he said. Still. He nodded. Took it. Avery glanced up from her homework. Is she going to divorce you? Mark didn't flinch. Maybe. The room stilled. Lena asked quietly, does that scare you? He didn't answer right away. Then, less than not knowing you. That landed heavier than he expected. Rachel shifted in place, unsure of where to stand now. Everything between them felt like walking through a house that had been rearranged in the dark, familiar but risky. She asked, what happens if Grace tells the press more than you want her to? Then she does. And if your board asks you to step down? They might. And if they don't? He looked at her. Then I'll still be back here tomorrow morning. Rachel stared at him, and finally said, okay. It wasn't a welcome, not a forgiveness, but it wasn't a no either. That night, the news cycle changed. The story evolved. From absent to accountable, Halston confirms paternity of teen daughters. The article quoted a short press release he'd approved that morning. It was simple, honest, no spin. I recently learned I have 2 daughters. Their mother raised them with grace, strength, and sacrifice. I'm taking responsibility for my absence, and I'm committed to being part of their lives going forward. The internet did what the internet does. Some people mocked, some praised, some questioned the sincerity. Mark didn't read most of it. Instead, he sat on Rachel's couch again, this time helping Avery with her algebra while Lena quizzed him on the names of obscure pop stars he couldn't identify to save his life. He got 4 wrong. They let him stay anyway. Later, after the girls went to bed, Rachel handed him a faded envelope. "This is the first letter I wrote," she said. He stayed at it. The paper was soft with age, folded and refolded until the creases threatened to tear. "I don't know if I should read this," he said. "Too late," she said. "You're in it now." He opened it. Inside, 1 page, written in her looping, uneven handwriting. "Dear Mark, they were born this morning. 2 of them. Girls. Both have your eyes, which is cruel, and your frown, which is funnier than it should be. I thought I'd hate you today, but all I could think was, he'll never see this. And somehow, that hurts more." Mark's hands trembled. He folded the letter slowly and looked up. Rachel was watching him. Not angry anymore. Just open. Tired, maybe, but real. "What do you want, Mark?" she asked quietly. He didn't think. He didn't need to. "I want them to know they weren't a mistake." She stared at him. "And you?" she asked. "What about me?" He walked to her, slow. "I don't want to rewrite the past," he said, "but I'd give anything to be in your next chapter." Rachel didn't move. Not toward him. Not away. Just stood there, letting the silence answer. And for now, that was enough. Rain tapped the windows like it was knocking for permission to come in. It was a Saturday, gray and slow. The kind of morning that made you want to stay under blankets and pretend the world didn't exist. But the world did exist, and now it was full of things that didn't go away just because the sky had stopped pretending to be blue. Mark stood in the kitchen at Rachel's apartment, barefoot, sleeves rolled, making pancakes. He was bad at it. The first 2 burned. The third was undercooked. The 4th one came out okay, and he called it a victory. Lena wandered in first, hoodie stretched over her knees like a second skin. "You used almond milk," she said flatly, staring at the pan. "That's all there was," he said. "It's not real milk." He shrugged. "I'm not a real chef." She opened the fridge, grabbed the juice box, and sat on the floor like it was her favorite chair. Avery followed, hair still wet from the shower. She raised an eyebrow at the pancakes. "You cooked." "Attempted to." She sniffed the air. "Smells like surrender." Rachel entered last. She wore leggings, a paint-stained t-shirt, and an expression that said, "Don't push me. I haven't had coffee yet." She looked at the pancakes. "You didn't use oil, did you?" "I forgot," Mark admitted. Avery slid a plate across the table. "We're not judging. We're just concerned." Mark smiled and sat down. "This is the most honest breakfast I've ever made." They ate in quiet, but it wasn't the tense kind anymore. It was lived in, natural. Lena chewed with one leg bouncing. Avery tapped her pen against her math notes like they were enemies. Rachel drank her coffee while flipping through the mail, pausing at a letter with no return address. She opened it slowly. Inside was a printed article. Mark Holston restructures board seat, names successor CEO in private move. She read the line twice before looking up. "You step down." Mark nodded, not looking at her. "I'm not going back to the company." The room went still. Avery dropped her pen. "Wait, you what?" "I resigned." Lena's eyes widened. "But you're like the CEO." "Was," he said. "Now someone else is." Rachel stared at him. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," he said, "because I was spending more time fixing things I built than fixing the things I broke." Avery blinked. "Are we one of those things?" "No," he said. "You're not broken." "I was. I'm still working on that." Rachel looked away, quiet. Avery said, "Grace must have loved that." He hesitated. She wasn't thrilled. "Is she leaving you?" Lena asked. He took a deep breath. "We separated." Avery tilted her head. "Because of us." "Because of me," he said. "The truth didn't ruin anything. The lie did." Rachel folded the article and set it aside. "You left everything." I didn't lose everything, Mark said. I'm here. Avery was still staring at him. You sure this isn't just another performance? He met her eyes. No speeches. No PR. Just pancakes and almond milk. Lena smiled slightly. Okay, that was almost charming. Rachel stood and started clearing plates. You'll need a job. Eventually. I'll figure it out. She looked at him. You've never figured anything without money. I'm starting late, he said. But I'm starting. Later that day, they took the train into the city. It wasn't planned. Lena had asked, offhand, if they could go to the museum. Avery had said she wanted a new sketchbook from the store near Union Square. Rachel didn't say no. And Mark, he bought 4 MetroCards without being asked. They walked the High Line, talked about things that didn't matter. Avery pointed out graffiti she liked. Lena made fun of the tourists. Rachel stayed quiet, but her eyes softened when she looked at the girls. At one point, they passed a street artist doing quick portraits for $20. The twins stopped. Mark asked, You want one? Lena nodded. Only if we all do it. They sat together on a folding bench. Rachel hesitated, then slowly, quietly, sat too. The artist sketched fast, with confidence, no erasing, no second-guessing. When he was done, he flipped the pad around. It was crude, charcoal on cheap paper. But there they were. Rachel, Avery, Lena, Mark, together, not smiling, not posed, just real. They stayed at it. Avery finally said, That's us. Lena grinned. No returns. Rachel pulled out her wallet. Paid. Mark tried to offer cash. She waved it off. Back on the train, Rachel leaned against the window, half asleep. The girls traded headphones and candy. Mark watched them like someone afraid to blink. Then Avery tapped his shoulder. Next week's my birthday, she said. I know, he said. 13. 14. Right, he said, flushing. Sorry. She smiled. It's okay. Just don't miss it. I won't. Lena leaned over. We want cake. What kind? Chocolate. No raisins. Noted. The train rumbled on. And for the first time since this started, Mark felt like he wasn't passing through their lives. He was part of the ride. And when the train pulled into Yonkers, the first person out the door wasn't Rachel or the twins. It was Mark, holding the sketch, smiling. The bakery smelled like memory. Warm sugar, cinnamon, something floral in the frosting that reminded Mark of birthdays he didn't remember having. He stood awkwardly at the counter, flipping through cake designs while the clerk, a teenager with glittered nails and a nose ring, waited with the kind of patience that meant she was used to people who didn't know what they were doing. Chocolate. No raisins, he muttered, mostly to himself. The girl raised an eyebrow. We don't put raisins in cake. Good, he said. They threatened me about that. She smirked. Kids. He smiled. Teenagers. Twin girls. They'll be 14 tomorrow. She tapped something into the register. You want names on the cake? He paused. It was the first time anyone had asked him that. He nodded. Avery and Lena. She wrote them carefully on the slip. They like flowers? Sprinkles. They like honesty, he said, and cake that doesn't suck. She grinned. Noted. He paid in cash, took the receipt, and promised to be back the next morning by 9. He didn't know if Rachel had already planned a cake. Maybe she had. But part of him hoped she hadn't. Part of him hoped she'd let him have this one thing. The celebration. Not the candles. Not the presents. Just the chance to show up with something sweet and say, I remembered. I'm here. Back at the apartment, Rachel was scrubbing the bathroom like it had done something personal to her. She barely looked up when he came in. You early. He held up the bakery bag. Didn't want to risk the birthday rush. She nodded and kept scrubbing. I got the cake, he said. I figured. He leaned in the doorway. You already have one. I was going to bake, she said. But this is better. He blinked. You sure? She looked at him then, hands still in gloves. You think I'm so prideful I wouldn't let you buy your daughters a birthday cake? He started to answer. Stopped. Thought. No, he said. I think you're used to doing it all alone. She peeled off one glove. That's not a compliment. It's not an insult. Rachel sighed and stood. You really going to be here tomorrow? He met her eyes. What do you think? She studied him for a long time, then said, I think you should be the one to light the candles. The next morning, he arrived just after sunrise with the cake in both hands and a knot in his chest that didn't loosen until he heard Lena yell from inside the apartment. If that's him, tell him he's 5 minutes late. He laughed. Rachel opened the door, already dressed, already busy. The apartment had been transformed. Streamers, balloons, a banner that had clearly been used for more than one birthday. There were faded letters and a piece of tape holding the Y together. A tray of breakfast burritos on the counter. Paper hats, cheap party favors that popped and rattled when twisted. It was beautiful. Avery and Lena burst into the kitchen in matching hoodies with level 14 unlocked printed across the front. They looked older than they had the week before. Taller, maybe, or just less afraid. Mark set the cake on the table. It's ugly, Lena said. I like it, Avery said. It's honest. He laughed. That's what the girl at the bakery said. Rachel handed him a lighter. Candles are in the drawer. He lit them slowly, careful not to burn his fingers. The girls waited patiently, their eyes on him, not the cake. When he finished, he stepped back. Rachel reached for her phone. Ready? He looked at her. You want a picture? He asked. She smiled. They do. He nodded. Stepped between the girls. They didn't flinch when he put his arms around them. They leaned in, just enough. Rachel snapped the photo. Then another, and another. Lena looked up at him. You going to sing? He blinked. Do I have to? It's tradition, Avery said. He cleared his throat, horribly off-key. Rachel joined in by the second line, laughing through it. The girls blew out the candles in perfect unison. Mark didn't ask what they wished for. He didn't need to, because when they sat down to eat and Avery reached for the biggest slice, and Lena stuffed a party popper in his jacket pocket, and Rachel refilled everyone's orange juice before they even asked, he knew what they had wished for. This, not perfection, just presence, just the people who stayed. Later, when the table was cleared and the gifts opened and Avery was on the floor organizing her new art supplies while Lena read out loud from a ridiculous fantasy novel someone had given her, Rachel passed him the phone. The photo from earlier. Him, Avery, Lena, shoulders touching, smiling, present. Keep it, she said. He looked at it for a long time, then whispered, thank you. Rachel didn't answer, but she didn't take it back either. That night, Mark sat on the train back to Westchester with the photo in his wallet and icing on his shirt and something steady in his chest that hadn't been there in years. Not certainty, not control, just hope, the quiet kind, the real kind, the kind that comes when someone looks you in the eye and says, without saying it, we're not done with you yet. It had been 6 weeks since the lunch, since the photo, since 2 teenage girls stepped into a restaurant and asked a man who had never once sent them a birthday card if he wanted to sit down and face what he ran from. Now it was spring, the kind of spring where the city couldn't make up its mind. Some days still bit with winter's teeth, others teased warmth that made kids ditch jackets and run barefoot on patches of wet grass. A season in between, still sorting itself out, just like all of them. Mark stood outside the middle school with a backpack slung over one shoulder. His suit jacket was wrinkled from being shoved into the passenger seat of his car, and he'd spilled coffee on his tie somewhere around 9 a.m., but the twins didn't seem to mind. They burst out of the building at 3:05 on the dot. Lena spotted him first. She jogged up with her hair pulled into a messy bun, earbuds dangling from one side, and a paint-stained hoodie that definitely wasn't school-approved. Hey, she said, like he hadn't been gone all week. Avery followed a second later, waving once before launching into a full recap of her social studies presentation, barely stopping for air. Mark just listened. He always listened now. It was the thing he could give. Time. Attention. A body that didn't leave when it got uncomfortable. I got a B+, Avery said, slinging her bag over one shoulder. Which is dumb because my slide transitions were amazing. I'm sure they were, Mark said, smiling. Did you dazzle them with that font you like? The one that looks like angry handwriting. She grinned. It's called rock salt. And yes. Lena snorted. She used sound effects too. There was lightning. Literal lightning. They reached the car and tossed their backpacks into the trunk like pros. Rachel was working late. Her Thursdays were long, double shifts at the school, then a community art class she'd started teaching for free in a church basement 3 blocks from their apartment. The twins used to walk home alone or wait at the library. Now Mark picked them up. Every week. No reminders. No negotiations. Just there. On the drive, Avery put on music. Lena changed the song. Avery changed it back. Mark said nothing. He'd learned that the back seat was a war zone, and peace was mostly about choosing not to engage. At a red light, Lena suddenly asked, "Do you still talk to Grace?" He glanced in the mirror. "Sometimes." "Is she still mad?" He thought for a second. Not mad. Just disappointed. "That's worse," Avery said. "Yeah," he said. "It is." Silence. Then Avery asked, "Do you still love her?" He didn't answer right away. Lena said, "It's okay if you don't." Mark kept his eyes on the road. "It's complicated." "You say that a lot?" Avery muttered. "Because it's true a lot," he said gently. The apartment smelled like garlic when they walked in. Mark had started cooking on Thursdays. Terribly, at first. Now, slightly less terribly. Tonight was spaghetti and store-bought garlic nuts. Rachel had left a sticky note on the fridge, "Don't forget Lena won't eat mushrooms." And Avery says sauce needs to be on the side, not touching the noodles. Good luck. He stuck the note to his shirt like a badge of honor. The girls collapsed onto the couch and disappeared into their phones. He cooked. No music, just the clatter of pans and the occasional curse word when something sizzled the wrong way. At 6:52, the door opened. Rachel. She looked tired but relaxed, her shoulders not so high. Her paint-smeared bag dropped onto the floor like it always did. She kissed both girls on the head, then raised an eyebrow at the kitchen. "Anything catch fire?" she asked. "Not yet," Mark said. She nodded. "Progress." Dinner was loud. Lena talked about a boy who kept trying to draw anime wolves on her notebook. Avery complained about gym class and the injustice of running laps in cheap sneakers. Rachel listened, her chin in her hand, eyes soft. And Mark sat across from her, watching the girls, laughing when he was supposed to, asking the right questions when he remembered how. After the dishes were done and the girls were in their room watching YouTube, Rachel stood by the window, arms crossed. "You're still coming tomorrow?" she asked. He nodded. "Wouldn't miss it." She looked at him. "It's a small thing. Just a parent-teacher night. You don't have to." "I want to." She stared at him. "You've missed a lot." "I know. I spent years learning how to live without waiting on anyone. You think I can just unlearn that?" "No," he said. "I think I can show you that you don't have to be alone anymore." She didn't smile, but she didn't tell him to leave either. He stepped a little closer. "I know what I was." Rachel's voice was quiet. "So do I. And I know what I want to be now." The pause between them stretched. Then she whispered, "What?" He answered without blinking. "Present." She looked at him for a long time, then nodded, almost to herself. "I guess we'll see." Outside, the city breathed. Inside, the air finally felt still in a way that didn't hurt. 3 days later, Avery emailed him a photo from her phone. No subject line, just a picture. The painting was finished. The portrait Avery had started a year ago. The one she couldn't finish because she didn't know what color shirt he'd been wearing. The one that had sat folded in a drawer like a question waiting for an answer. Now it was framed. Complete. His face was there, but different. Less sharp. Less shadow. A navy shirt. Faint lines around the eyes. The background wasn't blank anymore. She'd painted in Rachel. And herself. And Lena. All of them, shoulder to shoulder. A real family. Imperfect, but whole. Underneath, she'd written 3 words in small, neat handwriting. "We see you." And for the first time in his life, Mark Holston let himself cry. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of the quiet, impossible grace of being forgiven. And loved anyway.